Mayor Buttigieg says that the Democrats should move farther to the left if they want to beat Trump. Yes, because the already nonsensical identitarian rhetoric from the fringe far left isn't enough, apparently. They don't realize they're less than 8% of the population. I'm not exaggerating. Now, a lot of people have laughed and mocked this, saying, haha, silly Buttigieg, if you go far left, you will never beat Trump. But what you need to understand is their strategy isn't to capture moderates. They're basically saying, you know what, we've lost the center, go far left. They're hoping to activate people who don't normally vote. Trump did that. It helped Trump win. That's their strategy now. So don't underestimate them. However, I still think they'll lose because, as I explained in my video the other day, here's what will happen. As they move far left, they will lose a moderate and gain a progressive. However, progressives will probably already vote for Democrat, or they won't vote. The moderate, who is not going to vote Democrat anymore, will probably vote Trump. Some won't, but I believe when the Democrats lose a moderate, Trump gains a moderate, and the Democrat is gaining one and losing one, and Trump is straight gaining one. It's a net gain for the Republicans. But there's more to the story. So let's see why Buttigieg thinks this is so. And I've also got this story about more racial identitarianism from the Democrats, because apparently they think that'll work. It won't. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There are multiple ways you can give: cryptocurrency, physical address, monthly donations through PayPal. But of course, just share the video if you like it. And now let's get back to the news. From the Daily Caller, Buttigieg says Democrats must swing further left to beat Trump in 2020. Mayor and Democratic presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg said Friday that Democrats need to veer left of center in 2020 if they want to beat Trump. He is deservedly unpopular, but he could win again, Buttigieg said of Trump at a campaign rally in Sioux City, Iowa. I think he wins again if we look like we're offering more of the same. I think the way he wins again is if we look like defenders of a system that hasn't worked. I'll tell you how he wins when you look like you're pushing when you're pushing policy that makes Americans feel like strangers in their own country. Now, some of you may say, that's what he's saying, more of the same. No. I'm talking about how the Democratic debates, they were speaking Spanish, okay, speaking Spanish. Most Americans don't speak Spanish, some do. So I was like, okay, fine, whatever, it's pandering. Promising health care to illegal immigrants, saying they didn't want to deport them, and they would even decriminalize illegal immigration. And then Beto O'Rourke campaigned in Mexico, and Cory Booker actually accompanied illegal immigrants entering this country. I kid you not. That is how you lose. Look, there's a such thing as offering more of the same. And it's like, let's put it this way. Let's say every day for dinner, your significant other makes you a nice piping hot bowl of spaghetti. And you sit there and you go, God, more of the same? More of the same? I don't want more of the same. So they go, I got it. And they serve you up a piping hot bowl of dog crap. Now all of a sudden you're like, dude, it's not the same. It's a lot worse. It's not food. You can't even eat that. It's not food. And the reason I use an example like dog crap instead of something like, I don't know, asparagus is because, well, some people might like asparagus. That metaphor would imply the Democrats are actually helping Americans in some way that's different. Imagine if the Democrats came out and said, we want universal health care, universal college, but only for Americans. Oh, okay. That's something an American could vote for. But the reason I use the analogy of something you literally can't eat is because they're campaigning on behalf of people who aren't citizens of this country. Period. How do you convince, I'll say this. White liberals have an out-group bias. So maybe that makes sense. But I'll tell you what. I can't imagine this will be attractive to American citizens who are Latino or Hispanic and the black community. Sure, white liberals like the virtue signaling because they have white savior complex and they think they're going to come to the rescue of the poor brown people. But I have to imagine the black community is going to be like, how is this campaigning on behalf of us? Now, look, I know right away many people will say, Tim, you can't speak on their behalf. You're wrong. Perhaps. I don't know anything about these other racial communities, and I'm not going to pretend to. I'm just pointing out that while Democrats, white liberals in this country, have an out-group bias, meaning they're more likely to hate themselves, that's not true for other communities. According to data I pulled up before from other stories, like Hispanics, the black community, and white conservatives all have an in-group bias, meaning they're biased in favor of their own communities. White liberals aren't. If that's true, I think it's fair to assume that this politicking they're doing is actually minority community. You're telling people in this country you're not going to support them. You're going to support people who don't live here. Why would they vote for you? Like, if you go to someone and say, I'll give you $10, they'll be like, all right, I'm with this guy. If you go up to that same person and say, I'm going to give those guys over there who aren't working $10, they're going to be like, what? Why would I work with you? You're giving money to other people. Let's read on. Quote, and what that means is, surprisingly, the riskiest thing we could do is try so hard to play it safe that we continue to walk down an establishment path that as Americans believe that we're not speaking to them. You're literally not speaking to Americans. You're literally campaigning for people okay. Beto O'Rourke literally went to Mexico. Cory Booker literally brought non-Americans into this country. Democrats are actually trying to stop the citizen question for the census. And the complaints are that it would stop the political representation of non-citizens. You think Americans believe you're not speaking to them if you continue on the path? Okay, hold on. Buttigieg says, if we continue to walk down an establishment path that as Americans believe we're not speaking to them, what do you think you're doing right now by going far left? The New York Times ran an op-ed saying, you make Americans feel like strangers in their own country. You're quite literally not speaking to them. What don't you understand? The story goes on to say the large Democratic field showed off an array of far-left positions in the first Democratic primary debates in Miami last week. A majority of the candidates expressed support for decriminalizing border crossings, providing taxpayer-funded health care to illegal immigrants, unlimited access to abortion, and drastic economic changes for the sake of preventing climate change. Buttigieg prefaced his remark by noting that Trump supporters are not an exotic species. No, they're Americans who felt like Hillary Clinton wasn't speaking to them because she started pushing identitarianism. And so did Bernie Sanders when he said, if you're white, you don't know what it's like to be poor in this country or live in a ghetto. That's insane. It's completely insane. So now we can see that Buttigieg and the Democrats, well, they're likely going to deliver on their promises. Look at this story from the New York Times. Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren introduce racial equity plans. You know what equity means? Equity means racism. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not being hyperbolic. There was a story the other day. I did a video about it, where a festival in Detroit was charging white people double to attend. And they said it's because they want to bring about equity. They said equality is when you treat everyone the same. Okay, but equity is when you make sure everything's fair. Sure. Well, that's all noble and good, but how do you quantify someone's wealth based on skin color? Like, how do you determine the value of an individual or what their personal wealth is based on their skin color? And it makes no sense. So here we can see they're buying into a racist policy that assumes you're either poor or rich because of the color of your skin, which is not true. While we can see historical trends, we can absolutely talk about systemic, institutional, or historical racism. You cannot today determine the wealth of an individual based on the color of their skin. I kid you not, shoes tell you more about a person than the color of their skin. In fact, I will tell you this. I think you're more likely to find black or brown people with better shoes than white people. And that's probably because they care more about well, actually, I should say it's an urban culture thing, like having nice shoes, pants, and dressing up. And you go to middle America and people are going to wear like a t-shirt and jeans. I could be wrong about that. And I'm not saying it's a racial thing. It's more like a cultural thing with cities. The point I'm trying to make, and probably doing it poorly, is when you look at a person, it doesn't matter what their skin color is. Their race will tell you very little. You don't know where they're from. Their accent might tell you more. Their shoes will tell you more. Their jacket will tell you more. If you're going to make assumptions about someone based on their race, you're wrong. Look at Kamala Harris. What assumptions could you make about her based on her race? Literally nothing. You don't know where she's from. You don't know where she grew up. You don't know what music she's into. But look at her clothing. She looks well off. She is. Pretty sure she's a millionaire like the rest of them. But it's insane to me that you have people who are now pushing overt racism. Let me say this. How is this even legal? The government doesn't allow discrimination based on race. So how could they actually push racist plans? I wonder. I don't want to read through this. Kamala Harris, for one, is trying to launch a $100 billion home ownership program to reduce the disparity between, black and white. I'm curious about how affirmative action can even be upheld, considering we have civil rights law in this country. But there you have it. Buttigieg, you get your wish. You're not speaking to Americans anymore. But I will say at least this. At least the racial equity stuff speaks to Americans. I might think it's racist and wrong, but at least it's actually speaking to Americans who are American citizens and pay taxes, and not to people who are not part of this country, which I can't understand. So I'll tell you this. A lot of what we saw on the Democratic debate stage played right into Trump's hands. More support for non-citizens that makes Americans feel like strangers in their own country. So I'll leave it there. I got one more segment coming up in a few minutes, and I will see you shortly.